My wife cheated on me with her boss, then mysteriously signed over our $500, $0 house and $200, $0 in savings to him right before she suddenly disappeared. Now he's suing me for full ownership, and I have no idea how to fight back. Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, I thought I knew my wife pretty well. We'd been married for 10 years, and I always believed we had a solid, if not perfect, relationship. Sure, she could be bitchy sometimes. She had that sharp tongue and a tendency to dismiss my concerns. But I thought that was just her personality. She was ambitious, a little vain, but I loved her. Or at least I thought I did. Everything started to unravel about 6 months ago. Small things, you know. She'd start staying late at work more often, claiming it was just important meetings or a project she couldn't ignore. She'd come home looking exhausted, but her phone was always locked, and she'd get defensive if I asked to see it. I brushed it off at first, blaming work stress or her trying to impress her boss, Mark, who I'll admit I didn't like much. He was a slick, charming guy, older than her, and always seemed to be around when I was. But then the signs got more obvious. She started dressing differently, more revealing, more sexy, as she put it. She'd leave her phone on the nightstand and then quickly hide it when I entered the room. She'd get calls and texts from unknown numbers, and I swear, her eyes would flicker with guilt whenever I was near her. Still, I didn't confront her directly. I figured I was overthinking, that maybe I was just paranoid. The real shocker came one night when I was cleaning up after dinner and noticed her phone buzzing nonstop. I hesitated, then picked it up. There was a message from Mark. "Can't wait to see you tonight. You're so hot when you're nervous." That was enough. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My stomach dropped and my hands started trembling. I stared at the message, then looked at her across the table, pretending everything was normal. I decided I needed to know the truth. That night I stayed up late, going through her messages, her emails, anything I could find. The evidence was overwhelming. There were dozens of texts, flirty, suggestive, outright explicit. And there were pictures. She'd sent him selfies in lingerie, and he'd replied with leering comments. It was clear they'd been having an affair for months. I felt sick. Betrayed is an understatement. The next day I confronted her. I found her in the bedroom trying to act like nothing was wrong. I showed her the messages, the photos. Her face went pale, then she scoffed and rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, you're overreacting. That's just work banter. Mark and I are just friends. You're imagining things." She lied so easily, like she thought I was stupid. But I was. I knew what I saw. Her reaction didn't surprise me, it was typical. She got defensive, accused me of snooping, said I was insecure and jealous. She even had the nerve to call me paranoid, like I was the crazy one. But I was. I was furious, hurt, and confused all at once. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this after everything we'd been through? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The trust I had in her was shattered, and I didn't know if I'd ever be able to get it back. After that confrontation, everything changed. I couldn't look at her the same way. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted with everything, had been lying to me for months. I felt like I'd been hit with a sledgehammer. The betrayal cut so deep I didn't even know how to process it at first. I spent days just walking around in a fog, replaying everything in my head, trying to understand how I missed all the signs. How could I have been so blind? Kept trying to brush it off, acting like I was overreacting. She'd say, "You're making a big deal out of nothing," or "You're just insecure." Every time she said that, my blood boiled a little more. She insisted that Mark was just a friend and that she'd never cheat on me. Yeah, right. I could see the way she looked at him. In those texts, the way she'd get excited when she talked about work, about her progress. It was obvious she was having an affair, but she refused to admit it. Instead, she threw out accusations that I was paranoid and controlling, which wasn't true. I just wanted honesty. I started digging into her phone, her emails, her bank accounts. I was desperate to find some kind of proof or explanation. That's when I discovered something even more shocking. Just a couple of weeks before I found the texts had signed over our house. our $500 $0 house and transferred $200 $0 in savings to Mark. I couldn't believe it. She just handed everything over like it was nothing. I found the paperwork hidden in her closet, carefully folded. It was all there, her signature, his name, the date. She signed it all away, and I had no idea. The house was ours. We worked for years to pay it off, and suddenly it was gone. I felt like I'd been punched again. I couldn't understand how she could do that without telling me. I sat there for hours staring at the papers, feeling a mixture of rage and helplessness. The money was supposed to be our future, our retirement, our safety net. Now it was all gone, handed over to this guy Mark, who was probably laughing behind my back. And then, just as I was trying to process that, disappeared. No warning, no explanation. One day she was there, and the next her side of the bed was empty. I called her, texted her, but she didn't answer. I went through the house, hoping she'd be back, but she was gone. It was like she evaporated into thin air. That's when I started to realize she might have planned this all along. She knew what she was doing, signing everything over, disappearing, leaving me holding the bag. Now I'm stuck fighting a legal battle I don't even understand. Mark is suing me for full ownership of the house, claiming I have no legal claim because I wasn't on the paperwork, but I was her husband. I paid for that house, and I didn't sign anything giving it away. Still, he's playing dirty, throwing around legal threats, and I have no clue where to turn. I feel betrayed, humiliated, and more alone than I've ever felt in my life. This isn't just about money or a house. It's about the fact that the woman I loved and trusted sold us out and then vanished. How do I even begin to fight back? Since disappeared, my world has been turned upside down. I've been trying to piece everything together, but honestly, it feels like trying to put together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. The house is gone, the savings are gone, and the woman I thought I knew is just gone. I didn't even know where to start, but I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let Mark take everything without a fight. First thing I did was hire a lawyer, a guy named Tom who specializes in property and divorce law. He told me that technically I still owned the house because I wasn't on the deed, but Mark's legal team was probably going to argue that had the authority to sign everything over. I told Tom about the signatures, the transfer of funds, everything. He said that I might have grounds to contest the sale or transfer, but it would be a long, messy legal battle, especially since had disappeared and I had no idea where she was. Meanwhile, I started digging into Mark's background. I hired a private investigator just to see if I could find out where went or if there was any connection between her and Mark beyond the obvious. Turns out, Mark has a pretty shady past, multiple lawsuits, some allegations of fraud, and a pattern of using women to get what he wants. That made me even angrier. This guy wasn't just some innocent businessman caught in a bad situation. He was a predator, and my wife was his latest victim. I also got copies of all the financial documents I could find. The transfer of the house and the money was done through a series of shell companies and trusts. It looked clean on paper, but I knew enough about real estate and finance to see that it was a setup. Had been planning this, or at least complicit in it. She knew she was about to lose everything with me, so she handed it over to Mark first, probably hoping to keep him happy or buy his silence. I felt sick every time I thought about it. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we had built? I kept asking myself if I should just give up, walk away, and accept the loss. But deep down, I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to fight, even if I didn't know exactly how. One night, I got a call from my pie saying he found. Apparently, she was hiding out at a small hotel a few states away. She wasn't answering my calls or texts, but she was still alive. Hearing that made my blood boil. I wanted to confront her, to ask her why she did this, why she left me holding the bag. But I also knew I needed to be careful. I didn't want her to run again, or worse, do something stupid. That's when I started planning my next move. I knew I couldn't just storm in and demand answers. I had to be strategic. I contacted the lawyer again and told him I wanted to file a legal claim to freeze any assets that might have transferred or hidden. I also wanted to serve her with a subpoena if I could find her location. I needed to get her back, or at least know where she was so I could hold her accountable. All of this is happening while Mark's lawyers are pushing for full ownership, claiming that had the legal right to sign everything over. They say I have no claim because I wasn't on the paperwork and that was of sound mind when she signed. That's a load of crap. I paid for that house for years. It was our home. And she signed it away without even telling me. I feel so betrayed, so helpless. I keep asking myself, how did it get this far? How did a woman I trusted so completely turn into someone who would do something so cold? I don't have the answers yet, but I know one thing. I won't let her or Mark win this easily. I'll fight for what's right, even if it kills me. The more I dug into this mess, the angrier I got. Every day felt like a new punch to the gut. I'd wake up with a knot in my stomach, knowing was still out there somewhere, probably laughing at how badly she'd screwed me over. And Mark, that slimy bastard, was probably celebrating, thinking he'd won the jackpot. But I wasn't about to roll over. I had to come up with a plan, even if I didn't know exactly what that was yet. I spent hours on the phone with my lawyer, trying to figure out what options I had left. The main thing was to freeze any assets that might try to move or hide. I also started looking into the legal process for challenging the transfer of the house. It wasn't going to be easy. Mark's team was aggressive, and signature was apparently airtight on paper. Still, I knew I had to try. I wasn't just going to sit back and watch my life get stolen from me. Meanwhile, I got lucky enough to track down to that hotel she was hiding out in. I remember sitting in my car outside, staring at the building, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to storm in, demand answers, and drag her back home. But I knew that wouldn't work. Was clever. She'd probably just run again, or worse, spin some story to turn me into the bad guy. Instead, I decided to play it cool. I called her, pretending I was calm, even though inside I was furious. When she answered, her voice was cold and defensive. "What do you want?" she snapped. I took a deep breath and said, "I know where you are. We need to talk. I want to understand why you did this, why you signed over the house and the savings. I'm not coming to fight, but I do want some answers." There was silence on the other end, and I could hear her breathing heavily. I knew she was calculating her next move. I told her I was coming to see her, but I wasn't angry. At least, I was trying not to sound angry. I wanted to keep her off guard. Maybe I could get her to admit something, or at least tell me where her head was. She hesitated for a long moment, then finally said, "Fine, but don't expect me to come back. I don't want to deal with you anymore." That stung, but I didn't let it show. I just said, "I'll be there in an hour. We need to talk face to face." When I arrived at the hotel, I saw her sitting alone in the lobby. She looked tired, worn out, like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes darted around, trying to gauge my mood. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was boiling. I sat across from her and said, "I want to know everything. Why did you do this? Why sign over our house? Why disappear without a word?" She looked at me, eyes filled with a strange mixture of anger and guilt. Then she started lying again. "Oh, come on, Jack. You think I did this all on my own? Mark was just helping me. I was trapped, you know. You weren't paying attention. You were so busy with work you didn't even notice I was unhappy. I had to do this for us, for our future. You're just too blind to see that." She spun her story like a pro, trying to make me the villain. But I knew better. I knew she was lying. She'd been planning this for months. As she kept talking, I could feel my patience wearing thin. I realized she was trying to manipulate me, to make me feel guilty for her choices. But I wasn't falling for it. I told her, "You lied to me every step of the way. You signed away our house and our money without telling me, and now you're just going to walk away. That's not how it works." I could see her start to panic, her facade cracking just a little. I knew I had to press harder. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken, but inside I was shattered. All I ever wanted was an honest life with her. Instead, I got betrayal, lies, and a legal nightmare. I left that hotel that night knowing I had to fight with everything I had. I had to protect what was left of my life, even if it meant going against her or Mark. I refused to be the victim here. I was going to be the one to turn this around somehow. I just didn't know how yet. Over the next few days, I threw myself into the fight. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that look of guilt and defiance. The house was gone, the money was gone, and I felt like I was drowning. in a sea of betrayal. But I knew I couldn't let this go, not without a fight. I had to do something, anything, to turn this around. My lawyer, Tom, was working overtime. We filed a legal injunction to freeze any assets tried to move, and I started gathering evidence to prove she didn't have the authority to sign away our property. I also hired a private investigator to dig into Mark's shady background. Turns out he had a long history of shady dealings, fraud, lawsuits, crooked real estate deals. This wasn't just some innocent businessman caught up in a bad situation. He was a predator and had been his prey. Meanwhile, I called her hotel, her friends, anyone who might know where she was. Nothing. It was like she vanished into thin air. Then I got a call from my pie saying he'd found her. She was hiding out at a small apartment in a nearby city. I was furious. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I had to be smarter. I decided to meet her again, but this time I had a plan. I wanted to catch her off guard, see if she'd slip up. I showed up at her apartment unannounced, and she looked surprised, almost panicked. She tried to act calm, but her eyes darted around nervously. I sat down across from her and said, "I know everything. I know about the house, the money, and your little game. I want to hear it from you. Why did you do this? Why sign everything over and then run?" She took a deep breath, then started spinning her story. "Jack, I was just trying to protect us. Mark made me an offer. I thought I could get a better life for us, a fresh start. You were never really there for me. You work all the time and I felt invisible. Mark made me feel alive again. And the house, that was just a formality. I didn't think it mattered." I stared at her in disbelief. She was lying again. She'd been lying from the start. I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't remorseful, just trying to justify her betrayal. I told her, "You think signing away our house, stealing our savings, and disappearing is just a formality. You're dead wrong. You sold everything we had, and now you're just going to walk away." My voice was shaking with rage. I wanted to shake her to make her see how much she'd destroyed, but she just shrugged and looked away. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing. Maybe I was wrong, but I didn't see any other way." That was the moment I realized she was completely detached from reality. She didn't care about us, about the damage she'd done. She was just trying to save herself. I left that apartment feeling more determined than ever. I knew I had to keep fighting, get the courts involved, challenge the signatures, and hold Mark accountable for his part in this. I also started looking into options for recovering some of the money or property. It felt like an uphill battle, but I couldn't give up. I owed it to myself, and I owed it to what was left of our life together. The hardest part was accepting that was gone, physically and emotionally. She turned into a stranger, a liar, someone I no longer recognized. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine, even if it took years. I just hoped I'd find a way to rebuild. Because right now, all I felt was rage, heartbreak, and the burning desire to make her pay for what she'd done. In the weeks that followed, I threw everything I had into fighting this mess. The court battles were exhausting, hours of paperwork, depositions, and legal arguments. Mark's lawyers tried every trick in the book to dismiss my claims, but I had enough evidence to show that signatures were suspicious, that she was complicit in the transfer, and that she had no legal right to do what she did. Slowly, I saw some cracks in their armor. The judge ordered a temporary freeze on the assets, and I was able to secure a court order to investigate whereabouts more thoroughly. I also worked with my lawyer to subpoena bank records, phone logs, and even her social media. Every piece of evidence painted a clearer picture. Had planned this for months, maybe even longer. She'd carefully signed over everything to Mark, probably expecting her disappearance to be the final act. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had to hold her accountable, not just for the money or the house, but for the betrayal of everything we once shared. One day, I finally got a call from the investigator. Had been traced to a small town hundreds of miles away. She was living under a different name, trying to hide from her past. Seeing her location lit a fire inside me. I knew then that I had to confront her face to face to get some closure. I hired a private security firm just in case. I wasn't about to let her spin more lies or run again. When I arrived at her new place, she was shocked to see me. I saw her face flicker with panic and guilt. She tried to deny everything, to spin some story about how she'd been tricked, how Mark had manipulated her. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I knew the truth, that she'd betrayed me, sold our home, and disappeared like a coward. I told her she'd ruined everything we had and that I deserved answers. She broke down then, tears streaming down her face. She admitted she'd been scared, overwhelmed, and that Mark had convinced her she could start fresh. She said she never wanted to hurt me, but she was just trying to escape her problems. I looked at her, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and pity. I realized she was a different person now, someone I barely recognized. She was lost in her own lies and greed. In that moment, I made a decision. I told her I'd do everything in my power to recover what I could, to keep Mark from taking everything and to rebuild my life. I didn't forgive her, not yet, but I understood that she was deeply broken. I left her there with a promise to myself that I'd fight until I got justice, no matter how long it took. Now, I'm still in the middle of this legal battle, but I've come to accept that I might never get everything back. The house is gone, the savings are gone, but I still have myself. I learned that trust can be shattered in an instant, that greed and betrayal can destroy years of happiness. But I also learned that resilience is stronger than any betrayal. I've become more cautious, more guarded, but also more determined to rebuild my life on my own terms. If there's one thing I want others to take from this, it's this. Never ignore the signs of betrayal, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right, even when it feels like the world is against you. Because in the end, the only way to truly win is to stand up, face your pain, and keep moving forward.